Now, what's concerning is Clemson. So if you're going to talk about that game, then you've got to bring up what happened to Clemson. 34-3, 34-3. And listen, I can hear it as it's going on, and I can see the tweets. And then Dabo has got to even address it with some of his post-game comments. Everybody talking about the transfer portal. Well, they don't have a transfer starter. They haven't had a transfer starter. They can't do this. It's all the transfers. In fact, he even said, Dabo Swinney on the transfer portal criticism, he says, we're going to do what's best for Clemson. People are going to write and say whatever. And he says that's warranted after a loss like this, but it doesn't annoy him. And guess what? He's right. He's right. I don't think it's about the transfer portal. I've thought a lot about this. I don't think it's about the transfer portal. And the reason is I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, hold on. Michigan didn't change their roster with the transfer portal. Did they add some depth? Yeah, they added some depth. And could you argue that Clemson could add some depth in the transfer portal? Sure. And could you argue that they lost steam and needed that depth late in that game? Yes. Okay, I understand that. Now, what's more plausible? What's more plausible is that they're taking the exact same trajectory as many teams before them. I touched on this in the preseason when I said that Clemson was coming off a 7-year stretch that is as good as any 7-year stretch in college football history. They reached number 1 in the AP poll in 7 straight college football seasons. That's only been matched by Alabama. And so it happened this 7 years quietly because of what was going on and coinciding with that 7 years at Alabama in their 15-year run. So we were seeing what we've never seen in the sports history with the greatest coach we've ever seen in the sports history at Alabama and Nick Saban and what they were doing. And they were number 1 in the country for 15 straight years at some point in every single season. It was just ridiculous. They're winning 6 national championships. But then here's Clemson. Clemson was putting together a great era of college football, great era, one of the greatest, or at least equal to the greatest that we've seen. We've seen pockets from teams like Nebraska and Miami and USC and Texas and Oklahoma. And guess what? That's exactly what Clemson did. Clemson did what was the norm in college football. They put together about a 5, 6, 7-year dynasty. And then what inevitably happens is it starts to tear off. And this dynasty actually reminds me a lot, I mean a lot, of a dynasty that started to taper off in 2009, 10, and 11. Isn't it more plausible that Clemson is going through exactly what Texas went through? Hear me out. Mac Brown built something so special at Texas. He really did. And they were winning 10 ball games, and they played for national championships. They won a national championship, and then they played for another national championship, had another year where they feel like they were robbed out of playing for a national. I mean, they were right there. They were a preeminent team for about 6, 7, 8 years. They were. The sport ran through Texas. And in a lot of ways, the sport ran through Alabama and Clemson. And that 6, 7, 8 years, what was it about Texas that was just so elite? Well, at the beginning, they built this roster that was incredible, right? Linebackers like Derek Johnson. They had Thorpe Award winners in the back end with guys like Michael Huff. And I mean, they were so good. And guess what? They got this guy named Vince Young, and he was incredible. And he took a really good roster and won a national championship. And then after that, they had another really good quarterback. And boy, he was generational in a lot of respects in terms of college quarterbacks, and Colt McCoy took him and really should have played for 2 national championships, played for 1, and he got injured. But what happened at the tail end of Colt McCoy's career? He was carrying that organization and that program. And when he walked out the door, they thought they had an answer because Garrett Gilbert played pretty well in the national championship game against Alabama. And guess what happened? Garrett Gilbert wasn't the answer. And they didn't have the answer on the roster. And they couldn't find the answer for years. And so what happened at Texas is that they missed on quarterbacks. They had 2 elite quarterbacks take them on this wild ride that was at the top of college football. And because they got complacent, their roster slipped, the quarterback masked it, and then when that quarterback walked out the door, bam, reality hit. And that's exactly what's happening to Clemson. And it was so apparent to me as that game is playing out against Georgia. And I'm thinking to myself, what happened? What is it? Is it transfer portal? Kind of, maybe. That's what everyone wants to say about it, but it's not really transfer portal. What's happened at Clemson? They missed on quarterbacks. When you get 5-star quarterbacks and they don't pan out, that sets you back. And it sets you back in a big way. We saw it at Texas in 2009, 10, 11, 12, and so on until now Sark has brought them back to the playoff era. And what's going on at Clemson? They missed. We thought DJU was going to be that guy because of the way he played for an injured Trevor Lawrence against Notre Dame that one night in prime time. And then he became the quarterback and we're like, ooh, actually, it's not really that. Well, I think it's probably more like, Cade Klubnik. And Cade Klubnik is the guy and he's the star. And guess what? It's not panning out. And maybe it will, and I hope it does, because Cade, I think, is still a really good player. And maybe that's a team that can still develop and go on and have a really good year in what is unquestionably a soft league, and I hope that's the case. But right now, this looks exactly like what happened at the University of Texas. The roster is not what it was under Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. Deshaun Watson wins a championship. Trevor Lawrence wins a championship, but then he was masking issues when those older players graduated. So by the time Trevor walked out the door, Clemson was not Clemson. Just like by the time Colt McCoy walked out the door, Texas was not Texas. This, to me, is the parallel, and this is what Dabo is fighting. The roster is not where it needs to be. When you miss on quarterbacks, this is what happens. This is what happens. And I feel like we've seen this play out before. I feel like history is repeating itself right before our eyes. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.